Motivation is the combination of two neurochemicals, what we call neuromodulators. And those two are epinephrine, goes by another name called adrenaline. We need energy. We need to move. And we often think that energy comes from food, and it doesn't. Energy comes from neurotransmission and from particular neuromodulators. We need to eat, of course, to sustain ourselves, but goal-directed behavior requires a fuel, and that fuel is epinephrine. And there are ways to increase epinephrine. We'll talk about it in a moment. The other is dopamine. The neuromodulator dopamine does many things. It's involved in reward and feel good, but its main job is craving and motivation. Dopamine isn't about reward, it's about craving and motivation. And dopamine at the same time is something that we get more of when we reach milestones. So epinephrine and dopamine are close cousins in motivation. There is a way to increase epinephrine, just pure physiology. And a lot of people are already doing this, and my lab has looked at this a bit, but there are ways to breathe that will increase epinephrine. And there's another way to do it, which essentially costs nothing as well, which is you can throw yourself into cold water or get into a cold shower. Now, there are a lot of reasons to do cold exposure as long as it's done safely. But one of the things that isn't often understood is that when you get into a cold shower and you decide to deliberately stay there for 1 to 3 minutes or maybe even longer, you are releasing adrenaline from your adrenals, and you're releasing the same molecule from your brain, which is epinephrine. It's called epinephrine in the brain. It's adrenaline from the adrenals in the body. Getting into an ice bath will do the same thing. That will increase your energy level. It is a mild form of stress, but it is energy level. Exercise will do it too, but a real quick way to do it is to get into a cold shower or an ice bath. Not everyone wants to do that. So with respiration, you can do this. My lab has studied this protocol. It involves taking 25 deep inhales and exhales. So it looks something like this. But I think that we can take advantage of the biology of epinephrine and realize that when we have increased levels of epinephrine, we need to move. And sometimes that can be keys on a keyboard and focus. Sometimes that can be actual physical movement around, exercise, et cetera. One of the most challenging things is to have high levels of epinephrine in our system and to be sitting still. That's called stress. And 2020 was a forced situation of limited movement from our usual routines and a lot of incoming information that was very triggering to a lot of people. And I realize we're still somewhat in this, but whether or not it's for work purposes or fear of COVID, et cetera, it's clear that bodily movement is a very, very good thing. And that the more we physically move, the more that these circuits in the brain and body that underlie motivation get carried out. Because the reason we have a nervous system, I wasn't consulted the design phase, but logically speaking, evolutionarily speaking, the reason we have a nervous system is to move. The only way we can affect anything besides ourselves, other people, other events, et cetera, there are only two ways. One is movement and the other is sweating. Movement is how we speak. Movement is how we eat. Movement is how we reproduce. Movement is everything. And so epinephrine is like an engine beneath movement. Dopamine is like a rudder that steers us toward particular things as we move.